you understand by that? What do you understand by ethics? Yes. Yes. Ethics. What do you mean by ethics? What is ethics? Yes, tell me, please. Hello? Okay, not cheating. Yes. Anything else? So ethics is basically, if you cheat, what will happen? You will think, okay, what I did. Okay. So ethics is something when you can distinguish between right and wrong, and your conscience says that yes, it's right, right? So ethics, if one example is cheating, like you are doing something wrong, but basically ethics would be when you can balance between what you think is right. Okay, so that is what. So ethics is important for everyone. You know, for example, as a student, your ethics would be okay. Telling the class when your exam is there, just try to do as much as possible yourself without just that's what some just now as someone was saying cheating. As a teacher, yes, my ethics is that I should very honestly take classes and evaluation when I'm doing. I should not be biased. So I should not give any undue favor to anyone or should not give any. So every time, whenever we talk about just ethics, is when something which your conscious says that this is right and this is wrong, and you're happy, you're fine, you're satisfied with what you're doing with your deeds. So let me try to share. So there are various principles of ethics, and when we say that ethics are important because of this only, there would be people will there won't be any discrimination in the society. For example, I will just give you some examples of medical ethics. Medical ethics is something where, as a student or as a teacher, whatever ethics we are talking about, yes, it is. It can be responsible for a career, for being good human. But when you talk about medical ethics, that is something which is responsible for a life of a person. So ethics in case of medical field or medicine or for a physician would be principles will remain the same. That okay, what your conscience says, you should give justification. You should not try to be biased, but there would be a responsibility of a life. For example, um, there is a person who met with an accident, and he is admitted to the hospital. Okay, so same night, after some time, and that person who is admitted to the hospital requires some vital organ transplant or anything. I'm just giving some example. Same night, another accident happens, and the person who is admitted to the hospital now is somebody who is highly influential. He's a diplomat. He's I mean, just a politician or anything. I'm just giving you an example that okay, maybe the second person who got admitted is someone very influential. Okay, now, either it's a room, ICU, ventilator, just example, just even if the person doesn't need organ transplant, but the first person who got admitted requires a ventilator, and there is just one ventilator in the hospital. And the second person who has met with an accident is a highly influential person, and he or she can um, try to influence the administration in the hospital to get the ventilator available, which the first person who is also very critical. So this is what the ethics is. So there, the institutional ethics committee, the people who are involved in the ethics committee of the hospital, will decide that no, the first person who has come first is more critical. They will see various things. Who is more critical? They will not see that who is more influential, who is status wise good. So they will review that who is in more need of that ventilator. If that's okay, the second person, who even if he's a politician or if he's an influential person or diplomat or anything, if he is more critical than the first one, yes, so he will get it. So that is what is ethics in medicine. This is very important. So, but the principles just now I will share with you all. Principles remain the same. Just the application. A medical student or a physician will use them in such a way that that's responsible for a life. Teacher will use them differently. Student will use them differently. And as a normal human being will use them as a different. But the principle of ethics remains the same. Okay, so just now I will tell you that. Anything you want to talk about? So let's have just more, not very, just one I being talking. Even you can interrupt me in between and we can have a discussion kind of class. Okay, so that would be more interesting. Okay, okay.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
As I was telling you, this is what my slides are visible, right? So, as I was telling you, that ethics is something where it's a conduct, it's a rules for conduct. If my conduct affects others, so we have to do something which should not affect anybody else. Okay, and that too, it should be so. As I was telling you that you as a student, I as a teacher, we have to follow certain rules for our conduct. Okay, so most of the time, biological, medical, technology, any of these fields, and medicine specifically, they have more questions, more things to answer because as I was telling you just now, use of a ventilator, organ transplant, a person who is terminally ill. So there are many things where ethics will be more important. Ethics would be more crucial. More answers have to be given in case when there are humans are involved. Okay, so although even as a researcher, as a scientist, as a teacher, ethics would be important for everyone, but interdisciplinary field of healthcare will have more concerns. Okay, so bioethics or ethics is all the time bioethics will more, as I was telling you, bioethics will be more critical because that will involve the health professionals. Okay, but other than that, ethics will be there for everyone. So most of the time, there are four principles of ethics. So this involves these are applicable to everyone. So just will pay some attention to this four things, and then based on the example just now I was telling you, we will just discuss this. For example, autonomy. Autonomy is the first thing. So, as I was telling you, ethics is your conduct. So, how you decide that whether my conduct is good or not, whether what I'm doing is right or not. So, when you go through these four things, then you will be able to evaluate whether the conduct you're talking about is right or not. For example, autonomy. If autonomy is first principle, for example, it is also known as right of self-determination. For example, um, um, you say in a medical field that you cannot compel anybody. If a person says that I don't want to donate blood, you cannot force anyone. So that is autonomy, right? So if a person compelling someone to do that against their wishes, that can be anything, right? So that is breaching the first principle of ethics, that is autonomy. So when I say you have a rule of conduct, so rule of conduct is you cannot violate or you cannot force anyone to if a person has determined that I will not do this or that, then you cannot compel anyone to do that. You cannot force anybody. If a person has given a consent that I don't want to participate in this activity, so that is the first principle. So based on these principles only you can talk about, because once I said that it's a code of conduct. So then you will ask me, how do we know that whether my conduct is correct or not? So this is what your um, this is what your first thing would be autonomy. Second thing would be beneficence. Do well. If you think that, again, that code of conduct. Second thing, if you are promoting well-being, if you know that even the others, life of others, uh, if you think about others, benefit of others, obviously your conduct will be right. Okay, so second principle also justifies that code of conduct or rule of conduct, beneficence. Do well, promote well-being. So that's the second. Non-maleficence, do not harm, avoid harming, and justice, treat everyone same. So these are the four things. And again, if you are talking about these four, if you are following these four principles, automatically you are following the key or the first line, the first definition of ethics, which I said is to rule of the conduct. How is your conduct? So if you are following all these, ultimately your conduct will be correct too. So these are the anything you want to ask. Now, if I come one by one to these principles of ethics, you see, first is you are saying autonomy. That example I already gave you. That if a person says that, for example, you as a student has somebody, your teacher has asked you to do some survey, then we have to go and talk to villagers and take some questionnaire. One person says that I don't want to talk, I don't want to give my questionnaire, I don't want to answer. So that's correct. That's an autonomy. A person has the right to do that. Then other way would be, so that is the correct rule of that's the correct conduct. There would be second person who will say no, answer the question, otherwise I will report to X and Y, and then you will lose your job. So that's wrong. So, right. So now you know autonomy. First autonomy, if you are following, yes, first way of your conduct is right. Beneficence. So anything which is, if you think that okay, um, um, if my this conduct will harm others, you will not do anything that. So that is ethical. Most of the time, ethics would be when you do something which is never, which will, there can be, and even if there's some harm, there can be a balance. If a small thing, the people, there can be some cases where you will say that every time you will not have, for example, using animals, right, for research. So that is again, animal ethics says that using animals for research is absolutely no. But if you think that your work will provide something like vaccine that has saved thousands of millions of people, so some work has been done on animals, then only those that data is there where we say that okay, now you can use it for human trials, right? So that is again, so in those cases where the benefit is something which is little harm is there, but there is more benefit. So those things can be done. So one example of that is using animal for research. Okay, there also that also comes under ethics. That is known as animal ethics. Okay, so even uses of animal is ethics. Usage of human samples. Many of you, if you are from, you are not, anyone of you is not from zoology, yes. So there can be people who have to do some blood sample collection and do some data analysis. That also comes under ethics. That is also part of ethics. Okay, and there also, if somebody says that I don't want to give my blood, so you cannot force that person. if the person gives you consent, that is known as. So, how we make sure that autonomy is maintained? If I go to a village, I want to do some sample analysis, I take a consent from that person that I know that my 5 ml of blood is being taken for some of the scientific studies this group is doing. So that is known as, that is maintaining the autonomy because person gives the consent. Okay. Similarly, just another example which you will understand better, that if a person is admitted to the hospital, a person has to go for surgery. Again, there is a form, documents which a family member has to sign. That's also known as consent because you give the consent that okay, you know that this surgery is being done on my wife or mother or anyone, and these can be the side effects, and I know all the pros and cons and everything. That is also consent. Okay, so this is also part of ethics, which comes under autonomy. So, consent, giving consent, and agreeing to something is part of autonomy. Okay, then beneficence can be any kind. Balance, do not harm, again very important. Justice, treat everyone alike. Just now I gave you the example in a hospital, influential person was there, and there was a person who is from maybe not very reputed or not doesn't have much influence. So that both of them have to be treated like same patients. So ultimately, this will lead to respecting people. This will lead to a society which will be more humane. That is why we want these things for people to follow these, because once we are following all these, then ultimately all of them will lead to things which will where the people will more considerate. Okay, and as I was telling you, these ethical issues are more prominent in medicine field. For example, you know, medical termination of pregnancy, that is abortion, even euthanasia, where person says that I want to die, so medical assistance is given so that a person can it's a medical assisted suicide, right? Euthanasia. So there are many things which comes under ethics, and medical ethics is more of concern. Why? Because that is straight away related to the life of a person. Okay. Similarly, in case of research, many issues. For example, one example just now I told you that you are working on animal model. So animal, that is also one of the part of ethics. How, when animals can be used for research, how many animals can be researched, can be used in research, human samples, embryos, in vitro fertilization, cloning. Cloning is also part of ethics. Till now, we don't have human clone. Animal clones are there, but human clones are not there. Why? Because there are a lot of ethical issues related to that. We have very active institutional ethics committees who have to govern, who have to tell that whether the balance between harm and this thing, beneficence and non-beneficence. These are the two things of justice. So if cloning is done, what would be the disadvantages? Everybody, we don't want something like cloning to happen because it would be everybody cannot afford it. You want a balance in the society. People will start coming that okay, I want a designer baby X or Y type of someone having a gene or someone having a trait like a big musician. That's a way. I'm just giving example. But who can afford that? Only rich people can afford that. People who are financially sound can afford that. Okay, so that's why these are the things which are ultimately what will happen. Ultimately only few people will get benefit out of that, and some will be deprived of that. So that's why there are many issues which are very very interesting when we talk about ethics, and some of these are using organisms which are biosafety level 2, 3, what are the regulations for using animals, how human embryos, IVF, cloning, what are those? Everything, all those things, even genetically modified organisms, typically are from applied agriculture and all. So you know that, that there is a category when we say that genetically modified organisms. Why there is only till date only one in India, only BT cotton is allowed. That is also part of ethics and safety, biosafety, because there are a lot of things involved there. Okay, so all these prominent issues, some of them we will try to cover. So ultimately, most of it. So now you will ask me that who decides what is right, what is wrong. So, for example, in institutions, in our university, for example, we will have ethics committee. That is known as, so most of the institutional institutions will have IECs. Okay, they are the one which will talk about any research participants. If you are working on any human samples, IC would be the one who will give you permission to use human samples and all that. So this is very interesting. It's very important. IEC is the committee which is in an institution. Similarly, uh, uh, IRB, Institutional Review Board, is the committee in medical colleges and hospitals. So these are the committees which protect the dignity, rights, and well-being of the research participants when the human sample can be used to make sure that none of those ethical principles, they are these four, they are they are followed and they are not being misused. And any kind of assistance if required, that is so. Every time whenever a person is working on human samples, they have to take approval from IEC, Institutional Ethics Committee. Okay, and we also have that in our institution. So most of the time, Institutional Ethics Committee talks about the consent, what I was talking, maintaining the confidentiality. For example, I am working on human samples. I go to village and collect about 1,000 samples, but I cannot reveal the identity of that. That is also part of ethics. Because if I try to, that person has given me consent, that is autonomy. I am giving 5 ml blood, but I don't want this my name to be used in any of the public domain. That is written in the informed consent. So maintaining the confidentiality, that is also you know part of ethics. Okay, all the documents, maintaining any kind of if the data, if the samples are very crucial, like DNA, RNA, you are isolating something RNA, so they have to be properly labeled, they have to be coded. You cannot write a sample of Manushya human, you cannot write sample of X and Y, you have to code them. So there will be 0, 1. There will be one master file where you will, because so maintaining the confidentiality of a person and not revealing it in a public domain, that is also part of it. Okay, anything you guys want to ask till here? So there are many things which I will cover. There are many issues which are important when we talk about medical ethics. As I was telling you, cloning, euthanasia, medical termination of pregnancy, stem cell research, why there is so much limited work in all those, organ transplantation. So these are some of the major things where we will talk about how ethics are important. Ethics are important. Before I go to these individual things, medical termination of pregnancy, everything, I will come one by one to these techniques and how ethics are important in these. I will let me just go to the before we go to those technical things like how we are using, how ethics came into picture. So I will just give you a background of ethical theories. Okay, so just 10 minutes and then. So, I told you about the principle. I told you where you will use them, how in day-to-day life also these ethical theories and ethical principles are very important. So, just going back to how ethics started. ethical theories. So that is what I'm going to do now. So it's quite very, as I was saying. So these are the principles which I already talked about. Okay. So there are many theories. So this is these I will just try to share with you all on your classroom, or I will try to make a classroom group, or I can even send, because there are not many students. So I'll just send email, send these material to you guys. Okay. So these are some of the very old theories. Um, how concept of ethics came. So there was first thing which we talked about, egoism. If some action is good for me, so every time what do we say, that it's me, myself. That's why this theory, the fish theory which came first, was about myself, me. For example, if some action is good for me or in my interest, it's right. If I think whatever I am doing is good for me, ethically I'm correct. So that's what it means. Okay. So there are many theories which are related to this, which was egoism was with the time there are people opposed also. So this is one of the very old theory which talks about self. So but there are um, um, but talking about self and selfish. So there is a difference between, so there is a very mild or very small difference between selfishness and self-interest. Okay, so in this first theory, people talked about self-interest, my interest, but that self-interest, when it was converted into, people started talking about selfishness more rather than self-interest. Okay, so first theory was about, egoism theory was about my interest, what is right to me, for me, what is good for my interest is morally correct. That is what the egoism theory was. So it had, so because as I told you that theories, people keep on proposing something and there will be some oppositions for that. There will be some analysis where people will say what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of these theories. So even in the egoism theory, uh, the strength was that, okay, I am the best person, I am the one who has to evaluate, I know myself, I can evaluate myself. But weakness is that there's a very small, when that self-interest gets converted to selfishness, you don't know, there can be conflicts among, I think I'm doing everything wrong, but think I'm doing for myself is right. Maybe that's according to others, it's not right. So there are some strengths as well as, so this is something very, most of the, from this onwards, utilitarian, there are some other theories which are more accepted, which are more close to what we talk about now, the theories which are here now. I mean, at present day theories. So after egoism, there was utility-based theories. So that was more of um, uh, what ultimately you did, your actions, what your action resulted in. That is what is this. It was Strout Mill and proposed it, that they talked about your utilitarianism theory. That means actions, every actions have a utility. Every actions will have some product or consequences. So we have to, in the egoism, I was just talking about me, my interest, that's it. But this utility theory is something where what I did, my actions are important, but because of my action, ultimately the end result is what is that is counted. This is what, again, that's a part of ethics, that supports that benefit versus maleficence, which we current day theories we talked about. Okay, so these are some of the theories. I will just utility theory is the second theory which was accepted, where doing good will come back to you. That's what we say. Okay, so most of the time this utility theory was the one which takes everyone into account. That's the strength, biggest strength of this theory. Why? Because it's not only myself. Ultimately, because of my deeds, something which is affecting others also, right? That's why it talks about equality, it talks about considering everyone. So that's why it's more accepted than egoism theory. Okay. So these are two theories, and there are four more theories which I will talk in the next class. Okay. Okay, guys. Any questions till now? Yes, please.
And will you share the PPT with us?
Yes.
And
Yes.
when will we have our first ST?
Um, yes, Vijay. I did not get you, Vijay. What did you say, Vijay?
I'm asking when will be our first surprise test?
I will let you know that. Let's cover something, and then only we'll have some surprise things, right?
Actually,
Without
the midterm dates are coming now. They are getting starting from 20th March.
what?
Midterm dates have come. They are going to start from 20th March.
So don't worry. Surprise tests can happen till end semester, right? So why you are worried about surprise tests? Surprise tests can happen till end semester, right? Like any time.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
yeah.
ma'am.
Hmm? Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, Mehak,
Yes,
Mihir,
ma'am.
Mihir. Attendance, please, Mihir.
Yes, ma'am.
Ritu,
Present, ma'am.
Pragati, Harita. Harita was there earlier and he left. She left. Anvesha,
Present, ma'am.
um, Atul Krishna, Sarang, Rituparna, Arpit,
Present, ma'am.
Arpit, Madhurima.
Present, ma'am.
Okay, guys. Okay. See you. Okay. Bye bye.